Should you stay or should you go? Today I'm going to talk to you about why it's the wrong question and what question you should be asking yourself instead. I'm going to tell you at the end of this video what I've done. Now, my solutions will not necessarily be your solutions, but it will give you a starting point, a jumping off point for how you could set your life up, probably for some of you pretty quickly if you need to get out of town, if you need to get to another part of the world, if things have gotten too hot where you are, or things are a little dicey, you kind of smell the risk and the danger rising around you, you and your family get on a plane and you go to your plan B location. It's a very, very easy thing to do in the world today, and it makes infinite sense to do so. In this video, I want to talk to you about how I went about setting up an international lifestyle and why you should too. If you like this channel and you like the content, please subscribe below. Hi, my name is Tay Nix. Over 25 years ago, I set out on an adventure, exploring the planet and looking for freedom in an increasingly unfree world. I'm happy to say that I found what I was looking for. Along the way, I lived through adventures most people can't imagine. I ran with the bulls in Spain, I jumped off mountains in Switzerland, I toured Europe on a motorcycle. I even escaped a burning building once by the skin of my teeth with seconds to spare. I also studied ancient natural healing with a medicine man in the forest of Central America, took what I learned and taught doctors across a dozen hospitals in North America, including the world-famous Cleveland Clinic. I went to sea for 5 years and cruised the coast of North America from Mexico to Alaska, occasionally stopping at islands in the Pacific just to keep things interesting. And I even sailed through a hurricane in the Caribbean. Now, all of those are interesting conversation starters, but what I really want to share with you is this. I've lived in some of the most spectacular locations and hidden gems from Alaska to Argentina. And today I get to share with regular people the benefits of international diversification and how just a few simple steps is all it takes to protect you and your family and preserve your wealth through the coming chaos. In this video, I want to explain to you why the question about whether you should stay or go is the wrong question and tell you what you should be focusing on instead. So to begin with, the reason it's the wrong question is because it's not an either-or question. It's and. You should be thinking about staying and going. In other words, wherever you are when trouble hits, you're going to have to hunker down and be able to survive there. So if you have a main residence, say in North America, well, common sense would dictate that you have enough to survive for. I would think you pretty much cover most contingencies if you're ready to shelter in place for 3 to 6 months. If you want to get more extreme, be my guest, but a minimum of food and water for you and your family and your loved ones, and an ability to protect yourself and hopefully some good community. Even if you're in a rural setting where you may be more or less isolated by nature, that also comes with its own problems, because even if you have enough for yourself, you could easily be a target for other people who know you're there. Take into consideration your surroundings, basic understanding of Maslow's hierarchy. If you've done your diligence and you've protected yourself from starvation and dying of thirst, and you have enough socked away to survive a couple of months, probably you're going to be good to go in most scenarios. Nobody can predict the future. I don't pretend to do so. I would say that it's pretty much a mainstream idea at this point that there's going to be trouble on a level that may require us, especially if you're living in North America, to paddle your own canoe for an extended period. If the diesel supply were attacked or destroyed or blown up, or trucks couldn't bring food to supermarkets, well, you have about 72 to 96 hours before those shelves are bare, and that's not counting rioting. It seems prudent now. The FBI director, Christopher Wray, has said on multiple occasions, bad people are inside the country. Gee, I wonder how they got here. Thanks very much, FBI. And the likelihood of attacks on the infrastructure are just going up by the day as this situation continues to worsen. At some point, right, the real damage could be done. It's not that hard to bring down a power station or destroy a transformer or poison the water supply or any number of really horrific acts that are likely to be part of, especially if a world war breaks out. And as we're recording this, that seems more and more likely by the hour as NATO continues to provoke Russia. Wherever you are, you're going to need basic supplies and a scenario where the people around you are either friendly or also thinking along these same lines. Obviously, if you're the one who saved all the food and water and you're the one who has stocked up on extra fuel and you have generators and you're living quite well and your neighbors didn't, well, that's a problem, because at some point they're not going to scruple about coming to take what's yours. And so you have to think things through, I think, on that level, no matter where you are. But also, if you live within the geographic confines of, say, the US and Canada, including Alaska and Hawaii, you are subject to the dictates of your federal government. And because the people running the federal apparatus of the state have completely lost the plot. They are not on your side. They do not care about your well-being. In fact, they may actively be doing things to harm you, especially if they're threatened, especially if they're concerned about their own survival. And at this point, I think it's a reasonable conclusion to say that they have lost control. They are out of control. It's not hard to imagine that they may throw their weight around in a scenario where they also feel like things have gotten out of control and chaos is broken out. And so you don't want to be trapped within the geographic boundaries where a federal government has the ability to initiate violence and commit force and fraud against you. That's not a scenario you want to live through, and you don't have to. And that's why in these videos we talk about how easy it is to look for some kind of plan B. Give yourself a landing pad outside your home country. If you have the means to do it, you still have the time to do it. The window for doing that has not yet closed. In these videos, I talk about all the numerous ways that you can easily and quickly get yourself set up in a different part of the world if that's what's required. It does fundamentally take a shift in thought and a sort of expansion of imagination for most people. If you've never thought about living in another part of the world and you're seeing these videos and you're thinking about this issue and these topics are coming up for you for the first time, that's good, right? The even better news is you don't have to be in a situation where you and your family are going to be victimized either by an angry mob or by a government that's out of control. It's easy and it's very doable, but in order to find a place outside your home country, you do fundamentally have to have a desire to go explore and figure out where you might land. So before I share with you some of the places that I've found that are really excellent, the first point is you're not staying or going. You will need to shelter in place if real trouble hits wherever you are when that trouble hits. If a world war breaks out and people are blowing each other up and there's real trouble all across the globe, you're going to need to probably hunker down in place depending on sort of how your jurisdiction is affected by that. Whether that's a Plan B location or your main residence within North America, that only makes sense. And so having a checklist of things, including extra medicines, including weaponry and ammunition, if that's what you choose to do, it's not a bad idea to have that all taken care of and in place, and sort of until further notice, right? Until we're out the other side of this trouble. So let me dive into some of the places that I fancy and that I really favor and just give you a quick overview. First of all, we really favor the Americas. We like the Americas for reasons that I talked about in a separate video, but the short answer is you have more land, arable area to grow food, more water supply, easily available, and fewer people per square mile than any other part of the globe. If you're a North American and you head south of the Rio Grande, you're going to be welcome in most scenarios. There's very few places where you're not going to be, they've seen North Americans, they know that we come and stay for long periods of time, and by and large you're going to be left alone. Most of these places are still very friendly. If you're a reasonable person and you treat people with the kind of dignity and respect, you're not going to be singled out or targeted as a kind of problem or a foreign invader or anything like that. Almost anywhere you go in the Americas, you're going to be welcome. So that's a big thing in your favor. The other major factor that makes the Americas so attractive, especially if you're in North America and you're going to have to get out of town, is the governments are absolutely inept. The corruption works in your favor, and you don't need very much in order to get by in most of these Latin American countries. Luxury can be had. So let me just talk about Mexico good and bad right now, because some new developments have actually taken place just in the last few days that I think deserve some kind of discussion. I'm here in the mountainous area in the center of Mexico, San Miguel de Allende, Querétaro, even Mexico City, although I wouldn't recommend being in a major metropolitan area like Mexico City. There's a big water problem in Mexico City right now. They don't have enough water for everybody. They're trucking in water from outside the area and pumping it into the buildings and pumping it into various areas. So that's not a very sustainable situation. It's potentially really disastrous if water gets scarce enough. But Mexico City right now is very pleasant. Here in the mountains, in the area we're in now, a lovely part of the world. I find the people utterly ambivalent to our presence here, polite, it's well stocked, it's a pleasant enough area, there's luxury to be had on the cheap. We have a very nice house we're staying in. San Miguel de Allende, same thing. There's areas on the Pacific coast. I like Sayulita. It's a little town that's a couple, maybe an hour and a half north of Puerto Vallarta. The fishermen will always be able to catch fish, and the surrounding area is plenty fruitful. You can get good fresh fruits and vegetables, plenty of water in that part of the world, very much. San Cristobal de las Casas in the south, in the Chiapas state, clean, maybe the cleanest place I've ever been in Latin America, remarkably enough. And so Mexico still looks good to me. Now, having said that, they just completed the presidential election a couple of days ago as I'm recording this. This Claudia Sheinbaum is a bad one. I think she's going to be a very bad influence. It's more of the same kind of socialist, Marxist, feminist rhetoric that you see. I saw a poster for a telenovela kind of comedy show about why divorce is fun. And so the attacking of the family, you now see that kind of bullshit going on here in Mexico too. That's a bad sign. That's a very, very bad turn of events, I would say. As far as, areas that I wouldn't want to be in Mexico, I have a property in the Yucatan I'll talk about here in just a second. And, there's a lot of touristy areas. There's a big influx of money and prosperity and a big construction boom. For now, that's fine. I think if things really get out of control, it's possible that you don't want to be in a touristy area like that. The fact that there's money there may stave off a lot of problems as long as commerce and goods continue to move. But, do you really want to be in a touristy area where people may be becoming unhinged and, the economy collapses because nobody's coming anymore? I could see a scenario where Riviera Maya is also not a good spot to be in. Merida is one of the safest cities in the world right now. It's the safest city by far in Mexico. That's up in the Yucatan. That's not a bad option, I would say. So there's areas of Mexico that will probably be fine. And right now, Mexico's still on the way up. We'll see what happens, but a lot of good things have happened in Mexico. The general level of prosperity, and everywhere I look, it's young people working hard. When you come into the airport, everybody's doing their job. There's no sense of entitlement or lackadaisical kind of behavior. In spite of the signs that now the family's going to be under attack in Mexico, it is by and large a very pleasant, culturally conservative, family-oriented place to be. And so I like it for all of these reasons. Now, moving into Central America, all of the countries, from Guatemala to Salvador to Nicaragua to Panama, Costa Rica, even Honduras, believe it or not, on the coast near Ceiba, the Bay Islands of Roatan. Obviously, there's tremendous areas here where you could probably set yourself up with a plan B. I'll do separate videos on some of these. I like the Lake Atitlan still. I have a property there that's in Guatemala. By and large, if the world came to an end, none of the people there would really know, except they probably would notice a few less tourists, which I'm not even sure they would mind. That's a potential spot, I think, for people looking for a plan B. It's very pleasant. It's a bit rustic. It's kind of adventurous, right? It's the kind of place where you're going to have to come with a spirit of adventure. But, taking a boat across the lake to get from town to town, it has a certain charm and it has a certain outdoor wild flavor to it, and it's very popular among backpackers. But there's also a higher level of luxury and security that could be had there, again, depending on how bad things got. And of all the places in Guatemala, that's probably the only one that I would recommend. El Salvador is going through an entire renaissance right now under Bukele. That's very positive. The towns on the Pacific side, I'm told, are great. Housing prices are way up because a lot of people are going there, and a lot of Salvadorians who left El Salvador are now emigrating back, and many of them will be coming with money. And so there's a shortage of good housing. It's not a bad spot. Certainly, if Bukele can continue, and he's just been reelected for another 5 years, well, then maybe Salvador is also, maybe you're getting in on the ground floor of something that's exciting. Costa Rica is obviously the crown jewel of that area of the world. I'll do a separate video on Costa Rica, but we like it very much. I think it's a beautiful part of the world. Once you get out of the major population centers, you don't really have anything to worry about. The people are welcoming. It's a wonderful, warm culture. There's tons of nature. You're going to be off by yourself up in the mountains and near to the coast, and there's tons and tons of farmland. And so there's a lot to recommend a place like Costa Rica. It's a big hangout for expats, so there's community and sort of a network already in place there. And so we like Costa Rica as well. It is in some ways the top destination, certainly for snowbirds out of Canada. There's big Canadian network of expats there. If you're looking for a place that really caters to an upscale kind of outdoor, very exciting, they call pura vida, right? For a reason, because if you've been there, it's absolutely pristine in a lot of areas of Costa Rica. Panama is, to me, could go one of two ways. There's a lot of towns up in the mountains away from the city. The San Blas Islands, beautiful. Like, all these areas are spectacular. On the Caribbean side, Bocas del Toro, David up in the mountains, and Boquete, right? Very popular, also well populated with expats, and so pretty decent first world kind of infrastructure, and shopping is already in place and set up. By and large, Panama is a protectorate of the U.S., and because the canal is so strategic for everybody and because it's so close to the U.S., if real trouble breaks out, you can expect some kind of police and military presence in and around the city. That may be good, that may be bad, we don't know. But I don't know that you would necessarily want to be in a giant city like Panama, although, right, if commerce is still flowing, Panama will continue to do good business and probably be well supplied with all of the things it needs to survive and thrive, even during times of chaos. That's a coin toss in my book. If you move down through Colombia, we'll skip Venezuela for obvious reasons. Right now, it's actually still difficult to deal with Venezuela, although I think people who are buying now are going to see big returns because they can't get much lower, and it is beautiful, and it's potentially still a very wealthy place if they can get their act together. Colombia is super nice. Obviously, they have a history of violence, but most of that's in the past now, and beautiful areas, big cities, great standard of living, fantastic place to hunker down. The lake region of the Antioquia state is really spectacular, one of the really unique geographies, beautiful place. It's kind of the playground of the rich, but if you have that kind of money and you have those resources, that would be a great place to get stuck if you have to get out of town. Check that out. Or the place on the coast, Cartagena, right? Obviously the big cities of Cali, Bogota, and Medellin. Colombia is so massive, right? You could almost certainly find yourself a place away from the rest of humanity. I spent time in Peru many decades ago now. It was completely lawless at the time. They actually didn't have a government. They had no standing government. When I was there in '96, the entire government had essentially abdicated and been overthrown. Like all of these Latin American countries, it's a wild card. I have a friend who stays in Lima from time to time. Lima is an absolutely massive metropolis with everything that comes from big cities, right? From crime to lots and lots of poverty. Certainly at the time that I was there, it was shockingly poor. I can't say much more about it. I haven't been back recently. Bolivia, I don't know anything about. I've never visited. Brazil is a good option. Brazil has tons and tons of places to hang out, hide out, great investment opportunities, even still on the coast. It's a massive country. Probably I prefer the southern portion of it. I have a friend who has land there in Florianopolis, and a really nice place that he purchased there overlooking the ocean. It also gives you options if you're in the southern portion of Brazil to head south, right, if that becomes necessary. You have easy access to Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina. I would skip Chile. Chile seems to lead the charge when it comes to socialism and communist ideas. The leader that these people voted in, if you believe there's free and fair elections anymore, the Chileans seem to prefer these kinds of big swings. And now they've swung back to a guy who's obviously a complete idiot and will try to ram down everyone's throat more and more socialist and communist ideas. Of course, it will fail like it always does. So until they sort of awake from that madness, I would skip Chile. Argentina, right? Certainly under Milei, it's worth a look. Property prices are about as cheap as they're going to get. Even if Milei doesn't pull off a miracle and turn the place around, nonetheless, right, he's educating an entire generation, an entire class of people who previously believed the nonsense that they were told, has sort of awoken from that madness and understands, like, no, it's better to be productive. Let's not print money. He's done a great job of breaking down exactly why Argentina was so swamped with problems. And so it makes sense to look at Argentina. I have a friend that just told me they have an apartment in Buenos Aires that they're selling. Just to give you an idea, 1,400 square foot, totally renovated, modernized, brand new. The architecture is that old classical French style architecture that's so pleasant in Buenos Aires. And the place is going for just over 300,000 US. So it's not dirt cheap, but you're talking about really quality living, like really excellent world-class city, the most European city in South America, and really, in my mind, the cheapest and best city that you could possibly live in anywhere in the world is Buenos Aires. The tons and tons of culture and music, and the people are fantastic. The place is wonderful. So Argentina deserves a look for a lot of reasons. The towns up in the mountains, many of which resemble sort of Swiss skiing towns, from Bariloche to San Martin de, ¿cómo se llama? San Martin, up in the mountains as well. These are wonderful, beautiful places located on lakes at the foot of mountains where there's great skiing and just marvelous nature. The lifestyle is excellent, and the cost of living is almost nothing by comparison to a comparable experience in another part of the world. So all of these places deserve some kind of consideration if you have to plan to get out of town, to leave your digs in North America. You're going to want to look at some place where you could also then hunker down if you needed to stay put for an extended period, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years. Why not go shop for a pied-à-terre, where you could just either hang your hat, rent it out when you're not using it, bring your family if things get really unsafe in your home country. You shouldn't feel like you're a chicken little if you're considering this kind of move now. It makes sense. If you're going to have your place in North America, good. Get ready to hunker in place if things really get ugly, because it's coming. If you can give yourself the option to get out of town, well, then what you need to do is start putting pieces in place and setting things in motion where you can get residency paperwork, perhaps even second citizenship. We can help you with all of this. Together with some of the people in my network, I created an excellent inner circle I call the X-Plan community. The X in the equation is you. This is about your specific situation. So if you're looking for help and you don't know where to start to put a plan B into action, the X-Plan community can help you. There's a group of, these people are as far from being victims as it's possible to get. It's a network of freedom-loving, independent-minded go-getters and action takers. We meet every 2 weeks. We talk about some of the things that are happening, discuss solutions and sort of contingency plans, and we talk about the possible ways that we can also network together, whether it's through allowing somebody to stay in your property because they need to pass through or check out an area, or whether it's just sharing intel and the kind of observations that people are having in different parts of the world. You know, there are people online right now offering consulting services extremely overpriced for $50,000, $100,000, $150,000. Well, I'm here to tell you, you don't need to pay that kind of money to figure out how to create a plan B. The X-Plan community shows you the fundamentals so that you're operating from a position of strength. You're informed, you understand the steps that you need to take, and also how you would go about taking them. Stuff like permanent residency, or the paperwork involved in naturalization in a different country, or buying real estate, or looking at ways to diversify internationally. A lot of people decide to take this on their own. It's not that difficult to do. If you're busy and you want private client kind of hand-holding services, well, we're happy to do that for you as well, but for a fraction, a tiny fraction of the cost that other people are charging for this, because I really want to help as many people as I can escape what's coming and make sure that the good people who took action are also rewarded. And the other side of this chaos, when we emerge from the chaos in the next couple of years, the people who still possess wealth, whose family members were not harmed or killed by anything terrible that took place in the world, are going to have tremendous opportunities. And not just opportunities to benefit yourself, but to reshape society. What's coming after this chaos blows out and the sort of madness that we're seeing in Western countries right now is finally extinguished and a new chapter opens and a new day dawns, a new cycle begins, is that the people who protected themselves through that are going to have tremendous ability to influence the outcome of a newer and better place. If you look at the technology, if you look at what's taking place with AI, there's just so much to be positive about if we can manage to get through this time and not either blow up the world or enslave our population or allow the government to do what it seems to want to do. I hate to break it to you, but you're living in a police state. If you live in the US or Canada, you're no longer allowed to say what you want. You're no longer allowed to go where you want. You're no longer allowed to do what you want. The Bill of Rights has essentially been negated and shredded, and the government is right now doing anything that it feels it deems necessary. And this is a very, very dangerous time. We've never lived through anything quite like this in North America, certainly not in our lifetime. We've never seen this level of aggressive kind of state interference in our lives. And so you need to take that seriously, and you need to take steps to protect yourself from the worst of what's coming. I said I would tell you what I'm doing personally, so let me just run through very quickly. Remember, my solutions will not be your solutions. This is something I've worked on over many decades, but this gives you a point of departure and a way to understand, I think, some very basic fundamentals. I have a property in Central America, in the mountains, the highlands of Guatemala, on a lake. There's a stream that runs past my house. We tap the stream to get water to the water tank. I have about 1,100 liters, whatever that is, a couple 300, 400 gallons, give or take, of water stored there. So that's okay. I don't expect to run out of water. In the worst case, they would pump water from the lake, purify it and filter it, and everybody would survive just fine, right? We're not going to run out of water. It's a very fruitful country. There's plenty of food. The people grow food. People have gardens. I have a big garden. Getting staples like rice and things like this. I don't think that that area is going to be the first to be in trouble when it comes to food, water, and shelter. The people basically live outside. It's a very, very healthy outdoor existence anyway. I don't even have windows on the house. I just have bars. So the birds even fly into the house while I'm eating breakfast. Basic living among people who know what hardscrabble living is like. and being able to survive in a culture like that. The one question, of course, about living in a place like Guatemala, right, if things really went to hell, is how would foreigners be treated? Probably that's a concern. I don't know that I want to be there with my wife and son if that becomes a problem. But we have a property. We have a way. Nobody's going to close the border to Guatemala. They're not going to suddenly make it impossible for you to get in. They couldn't do that even if they wanted to. The government is absolutely corrupt and completely inept. They have no way of checking on you or hassling you or giving you any trouble. But true outbreak of whether it's vigilantism or just an upsurge in violence would be a concern in that part of the world. There's no question. As a foreigner, you stick out, right? They would know where to find you. While there's a big expat community where I live, it doesn't necessarily mean that you would be safe. So that would be the pros and cons there. But overall, not a bad choice. On the other hand, I have a second property on the coast of Mexico in the Caribbean side. I don't believe that I want to be in a place like Tulum, right? If things really got ugly, it's more of a rental property for us and an income-producing asset, but I'm not interested in staying there. Certainly not if things really got ugly and push came to shove. I don't want to be around a bunch of, blue-haired, spiritual-seeking tourists in a scenario like that. Those would be the people I would be trying to avoid. So, on the one hand, if things continued nice enough in that part of the world, perhaps it continues to produce us revenue. I don't expect things to get bad all at once, all over the world. It's possible, right? It's possible with the outbreak of war, which seems very likely, right, as I'm recording this, that things could really get ugly very quickly. But I don't know that that's going to be the case everywhere all at once. And so you'll probably have some warning, unless you're at ground zero when something really bad hits, to be able to pick up and move. The argument about stay or go is the wrong argument. You need to think of it as both. It's an and question. It's an and issue. You need to be able to stay put wherever you find yourself, and you need to be able to get out of town if conditions require you to get out of town. So in the next video, I want to talk to you about how I scored some of these properties so cheaply and what kinds of things you need to look for. That's enough out of me. I'll talk to you again in another video. If you want to find out more about the X-Plane community, there's a link below this video. You can click that to get all the details and to join us. And if you'd like a free report on how to create your own bulletproof plan B, that link is also below this video. And if you'd like to speak to me for 15 minutes, I do free consultations for people looking for solutions. If it's time for you to internationalize, please click that link and you can book a call with me. I'll be back in another video. Click here to find out about how to buy great digs on the cheap.